Guys, welcome back again to the channel. This is Masters and we are back with another video. Today we're going to be looking at operations on radical expression. Before we move on, take a moment to subscribe to that channel and hit that notification bell as well. Without any delay, let's get into it. So we're going to talk about, for right now we're going to talk about know your terms. So, what are the terms when you have to do the operations on radical? Well, there is something called the product, right? The product property. Oh, nope, not that one. Product property. Okay. On radicals, of radicals. So, what does that mean? What does that mean? Product property of radicals. It basically means if you have the nth radical of two numbers a, b, you can basically write them separately. So it can be like the nth radical of a times the nth radical of b. And vice versa, vice versa. Oh, that's even on if actually. You can do the same thing as basically if you have the nth of a, radical of a, times the nth radical of b, it also equals to the nth radical of a times b. That's called the product property of radicals. So keep that in mind when you have to do multiplications of radical. Number two, when you are adding or in subtracting radical expression. So when you have to add, right, and subtract. So when you have to add and subtract radical expression, there is something that you need to do first. And that thing actually is called, and we've seen that before, it is called the distributive power. So here's what it means. When before you, well, this is actually supposed to be the distributive property. Before you can add and subtract radicals, you need to perform the distributive property, unless they're already the same thing. But usually you're not gonna get the same thing at all. So, for instance, when we talk about distributive property, it means that in each if each radicands are different, you need to put them to become the same radicand. How do we get that part? You need to you need to do what we call the combine like terms. What does that mean? Combine like terms. It basically means if you have two radical expression that are different, and then once you simplify them at the end, if they have the same radicand, then you can actually add them together. We're going to do some example, but for right now I want you guys to know basically the terms, and then we're gonna do everything else after that. So what are the radicands? Radicands basically is like saying that the cube root of, let's say, 2 minus 3 times the cube root of 3. Okay? In this case, the radicands are different. Why? Because we have a 2 and a 3, right? So the radicands are different, right? Other times, and in this case, you cannot combine them because they're not like terms. Other times, it is the indices that are different. The indices are basically when you have the cube root of 2 minus the square root of 2. In this case, you see, the radicands are similar, right? But the indices are different. That's the 2, that's the 3. So in that case, you cannot add them together. For you to be able to add them together, both radicands and indices are supposed to match. Okay, they both supposed to match. So for instance, cube root of 2 plus 2 cube root of 2, those can actually be added to be equal to 3 cube root of 2. That you can do because both radicand and indices are matching. It's like when we're doing the x to the power of 3 times x to the power of 4. Because the both bases are the same, then you can just add the exponent. So in this case, that's the same thing right here. So that is that when it comes to adding or subtracting radical expression. Let's talk about the quotient rule. The quotient. Oh, let's talk about the quotient rule. So the quotient property. Basically, what we ought to learn is if you have the nth root of a over b, you can write it as the nth root of a over the nth root of b, and vice versa. Same thing. Basically, the same thing as the product property. Now, before we finish with this one, I want you guys to know, when you're doing radical expression, always put it in the simplest form. Always put it in the simplest form. What is the simplest form? The simplest form basically has three things. There is actually no factor in that radical that is greater than 1. Okay, that actually is a perfect power of the index. So if the index is 3, meaning let's say okay, let me put that actually simplest form. So if the index, which is that 3, then the number here cannot be equal to a power of 3. So it cannot be something like 27. It cannot be something like 8. It cannot be something like 64. Why? Because if you take the cube root of 27, that will be equal to 3. So the number inside of I would say the radicand cannot be a perfect power of the index, which is outside. Okay? Think about that part again. The number or the radicand, meaning the radicand is the number that is inside of the radical That number right here cannot be a perfect power of the number here. It cannot be, because in this case it is not in its simplest form. Number 2, there shouldn't be any fraction under the radical. You cannot have a fraction inside of the radical. That is not on its simplest form. Number 3, no radical should be in the denominator. Alright? So there shouldn't be any radical in the denominator. Now, let's talk at last about the one thing that we skipped over. Multiply, or multiply the multiplication property, right? Actually, we talked about it already in the first part. The product property is the actual multiple property. So in that case, I don't need to talk about it again. I did forget that we already talked about that part. If you don't remember, it is right here on the top we'll talk about the product property of radical. So this is basically what you guys need to know when it comes to the radical. Next, the operations on radical expression. Next video, we're gonna be doing some exercises. I may have to do 3 parts for that one because I want to do at least some, I guess, like 2 or 3 exercises that are easy, and then 2 or 3 that are hard or not easily doable. So, guys, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and then share this video to other people so that they can actually get the help that is needed for them as well. And this is my stats. Hope to see you guys again. Until then, my stats out.